Hello and welcome to yet another vlog. Here we are in Blackpool Pleasure Beach, my favourite theme park in the UK. It's a classic amusement park. We've got some really great coasters here, including a few classics, including obviously Grand National, my favourite woodies in the UK. You've also got obviously Icon, the Mac multi-launch, which is my favourite coaster in the UK. You've got some dark rides like River Caves, and I'm really looking forward to getting in and getting on some classic and some of my favourite attractions in the UK. So I've just come off of the classic wooden coaster from 1935, which is Grand National. It's one of my favourites, this. It was running really well, like for early in the morning. It was really fast. It was a little bit rough, but the airtime was really good because we were near the back. So yeah, some good airtime moments, some good pulls down the drop because we're on the back. It's still a little bit rough, but it's more sharp with the transitions than like properly rough. But yeah, it's running really fast, and I really enjoy that coaster all the time. But that is probably one of the best rides I've had on it. Really enjoyed it. So I've just come off of In Wonderland, the all-time classic dark ride here. I really enjoyed that. It's all the dark rides here are really long rides, but this one there's a lot of really vibrant theming in there. There's quite some large theming pieces. There's quite a bit of movement with animatronics in there, and it's a really good family ride, and I really enjoyed that. Really well themed, really vibrant, and there's some quite large theming pieces with some good movement in there. So I've just come off of Wallace and Gromit's Matic, which is another dark ride here. I actually really enjoyed that. Again, quite a long one. You've got all the scenes from different episodes of Wallace and Gromit in there. And including the were-rabbit at the end, which is quite a fun little jump scare. You've got the rocket when travelling to the moon. You've got the plane going over all the buildings. You've got some quite large scenes in there, and you've also got some various points where it goes downhill and picks up a bit of speed. So yeah, I really do enjoy that. I've just come off of Nickelodeon Streak, which is yet another classic wooden coaster here. This one opened in 1933. I was actually quite impressed with that, because this one's more of a family coaster usually, but that it actually felt a little bit jolty over some of the airtime hills. Getting some good airtime, it's sort of in the middle, but you still get some good airtime on that one. So down some of the drops and over some of the airtime hills. But yeah, as much as it's more of a family coaster, it's a lot smoother than certain other woodies. I will say that. But yeah, I was quite impressed with some good airtime and even a little bit jolty on there as well. So I've just come off of River Caves, another all-time classic dark ride, but this is the oldest, opening back in 1905. It is a boat ride. It's another really long dark ride. You've got the little drop at the end, which you get a little bit of a light sprinkle on. And yet you've got some really large scenes, I think, because you're quite low down in the boat, so you're looking up at a lot of the scenes. You've got the temples of Angkor Wat, the big finale. You've got the Valley of the Kings, the Egyptian scene. You've got the dinosaurs. And what really makes it is that the soundtracks change in each room to make it a bit more immersive. Like the Blue Grotto, it's really relaxing there, really nice soundtrack. Some good lighting in there, and overall it's an all-time classic but really good dart ride that. So I've just come off of Icon, which is the park's Mac multi-launch. I absolutely love this ride. It's actually my favourite coaster in the UK. You've got the two launches. The first one you actually really hit quite a bit of force. It's quite a gradual launch, but you still pick up quite a bit of speed and force as you go up into that top hat. Some great ejector air time. Some quite sharp whippy turns, but it's still really smooth throughout the whole ride. Really comfortable with the lap bar. Obviously, yeah, you've got the inline twist, the barrel roll over there, which is relatively slow, so you do get quite a bit of hang time. You've also got the Junior Immelman up there, which is after the second launch. The second launch just boosts it up a bit to more speed, but that element, it has quite a bit of height to it. And then obviously continuing round here with some whippy turns as well. But yeah, the air time, how smooth it is and how comfortable it is really does make this a fantastic coaster. So I've just come off of the ghost train. The original, it's actually the oldest ghost train in the world, this. I really enjoyed it. It's got some quite iconic elements to it. That huge drop right through the middle of the station area, which is a fantastic element. There's also a pretty good jump scare on there. As you come back through that balcony, there's a werewolf that jumps out in there. You've got the stove with all the fire effects in there. You've got the bone grinder with all the saw blades. You've got the iconic skeletons on the bikes near the end of the ride, as well as the head that sort of floats towards you. You got the zombie child in the bedroom. There's so many really iconic scenes. Obviously in there, just as you go back in, you've got all the graveyard and the sort of wall collapses. You've got the sort of wooden beams above you at one point that collapse. Yeah, it's a really, really iconic ghost train, this one. And I really, really loved it. So I have just come off of Big One. First time on this coaster. It's the Arrow Hyper Coaster. Currently the tallest coaster in the UK. It's actually really good. So you can get some nice views across the park from the top. It's the first drop, because we were on the fourth car, which is the second to the back. Really sort of got pulled down it. As you reach the top of the lift, and it builds up some really good tension, and then you sort of whip down. It's quite jolty throughout the layer. Anytime there's a sort of sharp transition, it's very sharp and abrupt. But yeah, so some good views. There's not that much airtime on it, but the turnaround section's really fun because you can get some fantastic views. There's a helix on there as well, which is quite a fun element. It's over at the back of the park, but really it's about that first drop, which you really get whipped around with some good views across the park. As you get to the top, you can look back and see all the park. It's more about the views and the first drop. The rest of it isn't really that intense, apart from it being a little bit jolty. But it's there's some elements that are quite high and some elements that are quite low to the ground as well. You get the head chopper in the tunnel at the end, So I really love it. And I had quite a good experience on there, despite it being a little bit rough, but it was more sharp than properly rough. So I've just come off of the classic Alice in Wonderland for the second time this visit, actually, because I quite enjoy that. All the dark rides here are really long rides, but you've got nice vibrant theming in this one. It's not really chilled out, but there's some smell pods on there. It's like lavender. It's really nice. Smells really nice in there, all the scenes. You've got the soundtracks as well. You've got some quite large scenes in there, like the big Alice as soon as you go in. You've got the Trommel Tunnel. You've got the White Rabbit. You've got the Cheshire Cat. You've got all the frogs. Yeah, it's a really good ride, that, and you've got some animatronics in there, some good movement, like the frog sort of jumps over you as you go through. And yeah, I really do like that ride. So I've just come off of the Avalanche. It is a Mack Rides bobsleigh, and it's quite intense. It takes it quite fast. There's a helix on there. You really do feel quite a bit of force. Up there's some kind of sharp bank turns, but obviously with it being a bobsleigh, it makes it a bit more intense because there's no like track that you follow. So you just sort of whipped around to each side of the bank turn. Making for an excellent, bit more of a family coaster, but yeah, the helix, you actually hit quite a bit of force at the bottom as well, which I do quite like. Sharp turns and a helix on there, really good. It's quite short though, this one, it's not that long of a ride, but it does make for a great coaster experience. So I have just come off of Revolution, which is another aerodynamics classic, opening back in 1979. It is a launch loop, so it is literally a drop into a loop, and then upwards, and then into a holding brake, where you are launched backwards, and then through the loop again, and then back up into the station area. It's actually one of my favourites here, because this particular ride I had on it, I actually found it quite smooth, even though I was near the back. The drops, both the drop forwards and the drop backwards, I've really got sort of ejector airtime, but proper like airtime feeling ejector. The loop is quite intense as you're going forwards, because it does take it at quite a bit of speed, and the bottoms of the drops you do hit quite a bit of force. It's when you go backwards though, because of all the force you get pushed into the restraints as you launch backwards, round into the loop, which it feels quite different going backwards because you're pushed into the restraint a lot more. But yeah, I actually really enjoyed that, quite a bit smoother, and very intense and very forceful. So I have just come off of Icon for the second time this visit. I really think this is the best coaster in the UK. It's got some fantastic elements. We're near the back that time, so we've got a little bit more air time on some of the sharper turns and some of the drops, and also that top hat as well. Yeah, really sharp turns, but really smooth. And that inversion as well, which takes it quite slow. So it gives a little bit of hang time on there. And that's why it is still my favourite, and that's why I had a second ride on here. And I've just come off of Wallace and Gromit's Matic for the second time today, because I really do enjoy it. It's obviously always the were-rabbit at the end, that's always quite fun. But you've got scenes from the Wrong Trousers as well, and also obviously you've got the element with the rocket from A Grand Day Out as well. But there's some good smells, because when you're in the bakery and all the bread, you can smell it in there as well. And also you've got Shaun the Sheep and all the sheep on the machine as well. It's a really good fun dark ride, that one. So I've just come off of Grand National for the second time this visit. We were actually right on the back row, so it was a lot more rough and jolting, very sharp with the transitions on there. But the airtime is fantastic on the back, because I really left my seat like on that. There's two double drops and there's quite a few airtime hills on there. It was a fantastic ride on this absolute classic from 1935. So I've just come off of the big one as a final ride here at Blackpool Pleasure Beach. That was a great way to end the night, because we were on the back row and it was a lot smoother, and that's for two reasons. So we're on the back row, and that's why I enjoyed it so much more this time. It ranks a lot higher. So on the first drop, because we were near the back, second to the back, so we weren't on a wheel seat, that's what was smoother. But coming down that drop, really getting pulled down and also whipped, because as soon as you release off the chain lift, you're just straight down the drop. Very intense. Some great views across the park, and a lot smoother. A lot smoother than it was the first time I came on. But yeah, it was really nice seeing the park lit up, and also seeing that, having it in the dark as well. That really made it a fantastic way to end this day at Blackpool Pleasure Beach. And that was a fantastic way to end this trip to Blackpool Pleasure Beach. Big one. I really enjoyed doing that for the first time. The first time it's quite rough, because we were at the three rows, we were on the back, whereas the second time we did it, it was more intense because we were on the back car, but in the middle row of the back car. So it was a lot smoother because we weren't on a wheel seat. So yeah, two rides on big one, and the late night ride was absolutely fantastic with the views. Of course, Icon, my favourite coaster in the UK. Really smooth, that one. Some good force on the launch, some good air time on there. And of course, doing the classic Grand National, the wooden coaster, which I really enjoyed. Quite jolty, that one, but I do still enjoy it. And of course the dark ride, like Ghost Train, that's fantastic, that is. River Caves, Alice in Wonderland, Wallace and Gromit's also great. We had a couple of rides on a couple of the dark rides as well. So I've really enjoyed this trip to Blackpool Pleasure Beach. And we did actually get one on-ride photo while we were here as well. And that is of course from the big one, the UK's tallest coaster, because it was my first experience on there. We did get an on-ride photo from the park,